The latest tech.
I'm Alexa. I can answer your questions.
Interviews.
And we are evolving, and we are seeing an amazing opportunity that is happening.
Accessibility.
Accessibility is one of our core values. It's even a part of our mission statement.
This is DoubleTap TV.
Welcome back to another edition of Double Tap TV. Thank you guys so much for being with us each and every single week. Of course, if you want to get involved, there's so many ways to do that. You can email us. The email address is feedback@AMI.CA. On Twitter, we are at DoubleTap Canada. And if you use the hashtag, which is AskDoubleTap, we're definitely going to take advantage of that because we've got another exciting episode of Ask Us Anything coming up. We won't tell you when, but it's coming up. So we want to hear your questions, anything about technology, anything about assistive technology, let us know, and we will get to it on a future show, guaranteed. Of course, on all other social media, just look up DoubleTap Canada or doubletap.online. I am Mark AFLALO. Beside me each and every single week, it would not be the same without Stephen Scott. Stephen, this week is an exciting episode because we've got a great guest from Microsoft who's going to be on board in a couple minutes talking all about accessibility of Windows 11, which brings me to a question I have for you, which is, when a new version of an operating system comes out, whether it be Mac OS, whether it be Windows, no matter what it is, as someone who uses all this assistive technology, is it something that you kind of sit, wait, and watch to see to make sure everything works? Or are you confident enough at this stage to jump right in and actually just hit that upgrade button and not worry that everything's going to work the way it should?
Well, that would be the dream, Mark. The dream is just to hit that upgrade button, go straight to the next operating system. But when you use assistive tech, oftentimes, especially if you use third-party assistive tech, like, for example, if you're using JAWS on Windows, say, you have to know that when you do that upgrade, that JAWS is going to be there for you, is going to be able to cope. And you kind of take your direction from the companies like Freedom Scientific in that case. When it comes to Apple, it's a bit different because, of course, Apple and VoiceOver is all one, right? So in theory, you should be able to do the upgrade. But the reality is there's a bit of a chicken and egg situation with Apple and indeed any operating system in that you kind of want to wait until someone else has done it first. So you're just waiting for a blind person to say, hey, I've upgraded, it's all fine. And then you just go ahead and continue the upgrade. I think that the general rule is wait a month or two.
Has that changed, do you think, at all with the adoption of this whole subscription model where updates are coming out almost daily? Like, they're able to patch things really quickly.
Yeah, well, of course, the downside for accessibility users is that often can break accessibility. So when something is perfectly well and functioning, and a good example of this is actually Microsoft Teams. Microsoft Teams during the pandemic went through 150 updates over 1 year. Now that fixed a lot of problems. It created a ton of accessibility issues. And then of course you had to wait until those accessibility issues were resolved to upgrade. But in some cases you didn't even have the choice because the system upgraded on your behalf. It did it for you. So, you have all these challenges that you're facing. So you would think that swifter updates would make it easier, would make it better. Arguably, there's smaller updates if they're swift like that. But actually, they can sometimes cause more harm. So the general rule of thumb as a blind person is turn off those auto updates. Just gradually update your systems as you need to. If there's a feature in there you really want, then check it first, check in with the community, check online, get on the JAWS user forums on Facebook, or if you're on Apple, check out appleviz.com. Make sure that you're aware of what's going on before you make that update.
Now, companies like Freedom Scientific, the makers of JAWS, you have to assume that they're in on the insider program and the beta versions and are testing their software with every single update, wouldn't you?
Absolutely, and they are. Companies like Freedom Scientific and others, not just them, but other companies that make assistive tech, which is crucial to the operating of the computer. Imagine an update, Mark, where you are unable to use the keyboard all of a sudden. How would that work? That wouldn't make any sense. Well, that's essentially what happens when a screen reader doesn't work. It disables our keyboard for us. It disables our input method for that device. So, it has to be right. And those companies are in, not just at the insider level, but I think they're definitely deeper into the company. Freedom Scientific does have a continual conversation with Microsoft to make sure that there aren't problems. We had a big issue when Windows 10 came along that Windows Edge just didn't work with Freedom Scientific and JAWS at all. There was just no way that browser would work. And that was a real problem, and it was because Microsoft at that point wouldn't share the information that they were using to make Microsoft Edge and share that with companies like Freedom Scientific. And that, of course, led to a lot of problems. Thankfully, that's changed.
Carolina Hernandez is a Windows accessibility leader over at Microsoft, and she is standing by to join us on this week's edition of Double Tap TV to dive into some specific features in Windows 11. Stephen, you've been using Windows 11 for a couple months now. Is there anything that you feel is lacking, or do you feel that this was a fairly smooth transition from Windows 10?
For a blind user, Mark, this has not felt like much of a movement at all. A lot of the changes in Windows 11 are visual. Things like moving the start menu to the center of the screen. That means nothing to me, right? I don't care what the start menu is. I'm just glad it's got one. I'm glad it's not Windows 8, that didn't even bother with a start menu. Or I think the whole thing was a start menu. Very bizarre. Horrible experience. Well, thankfully, we're not back to that. Yeah, most of the changes are under the hood or they're visual. And that means that we're not really noticing a huge difference. But there are a lot of things we are going to pick up on today through our conversation with Carolina.
Well, I'm looking forward to it, so let's do just that. We're going to take a quick break here on Double Tap TV and come back with our guest, Carolina Hernandez, Windows Accessibility Leader over at Microsoft. Stick around.
For more great Double Tap TV content, visit AMI.CA/DoubleTap. This is Double Tap TV.
Welcome back to Double Tap TV. Thank you so much for being with us each and every single week. I'm going to remind you again what our email address is. It is feedback@AMI.CA, and of course on social media, look up Double Tap Canada, of course on Twitter @Double Tap Canada, and use the hashtag AskDoubleTap because we want to get to your questions. We want to answer them. We want to take a lot of time and research them. Okay, fine, maybe not research them, but do get in your questions because we're going to be featuring them in an upcoming episode of Double Tap TV. This week, we are talking all about Windows accessibility. I am Mark AFLALO with Stephen Scott by my side. Stephen, we are joined by Carolina Hernandez, Windows Accessibility Leader over at Microsoft. Carolina, thank you so much for taking the time to join us here on Double Tap TV. It's such a pleasure to have you on board. I got to start by asking you one really specific question, which is, for blind and low vision users, what features are specifically there in Windows 11 that people can get their hands on today?
So within Windows, we actually have under settings, you're going to be able to find all of our accessibility settings. So if you have Windows 10, you're going to be able to find all of these features under the label Ease of Access. And in Windows 11, it's actually under the label Accessibility. And I hope we get to talk a little bit about that later during our chat. But overall, both in Windows 10 and in Windows 11, you're going to find that we have organized all of our accessibility or ease of access features around 3 different groups. So we have vision, hearing, and interaction. And for particularly for low vision, let's start there. We have a couple of different tools that really help folks who may have only a little bit of, that maybe need a little bit of help looking at the screen, reading that text, all the way to, we have Narrator, who's our screen reader for people who are blind. And so in that spectrum, we have things like in the ability to increase the text size. So if you need just a little bit more text, to see that text really crispy on your screen, you're able to increase that text size. But we also have the ability to customize both your mouse pointer and your text cursor. And so if you are also in a reading situation or you're authoring and it's harder for you to find that little blinking cursor in the middle of your, your text in white background, you're able to customize that and make it larger as well, so that it's just easier for you to author. And then again, like I mentioned, the mouse pointer. You can also enlarge that mouse pointer, make it bright. Mine is bright and pink, so that it's easier to find in any of the screens that I have. And then we also have magnifiers. So if you need more help trying to look at things on the screen, and you can always use our magnification tool. Which in our recent version of Windows 10 and also in Windows 11 has the ability to read text. And so if you are looking at the screen all day and you're finding that your eyes are getting tired and you'd rather get the text read out loud to you, magnification, our magnifier tool can help you to do that. And then Next one that I'll highlight is going to be our high contrast colors, where if you have light sensitivity in the light from your screen, from those white backgrounds that often apps have is hurting your eyes, you can always switch on high contrast to decrease that brightness and help your eyes more comfortably see the screen.
Now, you mentioned earlier that you had made some changes to the name of the features that we're talking about here. Previously on Windows 10, it was ease of access settings. Now it's called accessibility settings. Why the change?
Yeah, it's actually an awesome question. So one of the things that we do in Windows and at Microsoft is that we are fueled by feedback. We love our customers and we love to hear from our customers. And one of the things that we heard from our customers was that the name ease of access was not very recognizable, right? We asked, one of the things that we try to do with this name ease of access was to encompass a set of features that would help people with disability, people that identify with having a disability and people that didn't identify with having a disability, but we knew that these tools could help them as well. But when we went back to our customers and our users and we asked, hey, what does the name ease of access say to you? What do you think you can find in there? No one really told us what we were wanting to hear, which was, oh, is it tools that can help me use my computer better? We actually heard some people tell us, like, I think maybe there's options for connecting to the internet in there. And so we definitely understood that the name ease of access wasn't working as we wanted to. And so we asked folks, hey, what do you expect to find, or what are the things that the name that you would expect to find these set of features under? And they told us accessibility. Accessibility is really the name that I would want to find these things under. And so with that data in mind, we also started to look at our iconography, because we also use, in many places, we use iconography to denote where you can find accessibility features. And so we tested about maybe 10 different combinations of different icons with names and with the name accessibility. And we ended up finalizing for Windows 11 with the more human feature to encompass all of the human abilities and then the term accessibility. And when we went back and tested this with our users, they absolutely said, yep, that is what I'm looking for. And that is really what I would expect to see. And so that's one of the main reason why we made the change from ease of access to accessibility in Windows 11.
Carolina, stick around. We've got more questions for you. We want to dive into so many more features. It is Double Tap TV with Stephen Scott and Mark AFLALO, and our guest Carolina Hernandez, Windows Accessibility Lead over at Microsoft. We're going to take a quick break and come back with more.
For more great Double Tap TV content, visit AMI.CA/DoubleTap. This is Double Tap TV.
We're back on Double Tap TV with our special guest this week, Carolina Hernandez, Accessibility Lead over at Microsoft. I am Mark AFLALO and Stephen Scott is by my side each and every single week, but let's push Stephen aside for a second and bring Carolina back on the screen here. Carolina, I got to ask you something as an able-bodied person, someone who is learning a lot about accessibility thanks to this show here. I find that I'm learning a lot, and I'm finding that it's going to help me and other people who aren't disabled understand not only the features, but also realize that down the road, if something does happen, if I do start losing my vision, that I will be able to use my tech. And that's kind of the point, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And part of what we want to do, and part of the things that we do, actually in partnership with our Disability Answer Desk that you mentioned, is we've created a lot of different, and we continue to create a lot of webinars. And so these webinars are meant to highlight how you can use our products with the different accessibility tools. And so we are able to, and we cover everything in a very in a range of topics, but also for a range of knowledge that folks might have. We have topics that are from like, hey, here is how you do kind of basic tasks. So if you're starting to learn, as you're saying, like maybe you're losing your sight and you're starting to learn, like, okay, what are the tools that I need and how do I start to use those tools to do the things that I do today. And so that's one of the resources that we've started to put together in Microsoft with in partnership with the Accessibility Answer Desk and across all of our products. It's not just Windows, but Office, in multiple other products, so that we can help people learn about what's there and how they can learn how to do any of the things that they do today.
Okay, let's talk about the new accessibility features in Windows 11 that everybody wants to know about. I mentioned earlier that I feel that the update to Windows 11 is very much a visual one. Lots of changes, and I have to say lots of benefits there for people with low vision because of the new relaxed environment that you've kind of created through all these lovely visual schemes through dark mode, but actually considering dark mode to be a relaxing experience, but not just with visuals, but also through sound as well.
Yeah, and so I love that you bring that up. Yeah, so one of the things that we thought about when we thought about designing Windows 11 was to bring the sense of calmness, right? And I think that principle of bringing the sense of calmness, the sense of like, Windows kind of going into that background to really bringing you and allowing you to create and be your best and just interact with the things that you want and love, right? Connect with the ones that you love, which is what we do with our PCs all the time now, brought out these fantastic features that help everyone. So like you mentioned, like the ability to have kind of these different desktops and being able to theme them differently, but also we've extended support across more surfaces for dark theme, because some of these were not there. And so when you turn on this dark theme, you have a more consistent kind of experience, right? And then another one that I love, it is part of our accessibility settings, is the new redesigned contrast themes, where we really took on the feedback from the community and we created a set of 4 new themes that are the color combinations are more aesthetically pleasing and they're easier on your eyes. And so that's another one where it's just gives you this sense of calm, and it gives you this more kind of, would say, like beautiful visuals. And then on the sounds, it was one of the things where this one was a set that was kind of close to my heart, because it was kind of in 2 places, right? Like our sounds were very harsh in Windows 10. Like if you hear the sounds in Windows 10 and you hear the sounds in Windows 11, at first you're like, oh yeah, they're different. But then after you're using Windows 11 for a little while, if you have to go back to Windows 10, you're almost startled. Like, so we've started to get some feedback from some folks that are neurodiverse that said, hey, when I first heard the sounds, like I didn't think much about them. And now that I've been using them, I absolutely love them because they're not as harsh and they don't startle me every time like an email comes in or like a meeting invite, is reminding me that it's in 15 minutes. And so that is super fantastic for us to hear and to know from our customers.
If you're just joining us, we're in conversation with Carolina Hernandez, Windows Accessibility Lead at Microsoft, talking all things Windows 11 accessibility. Now, Carolina, I got to ask you a question about Narrator, which is the screen reader that's built into Windows and Windows 11 specifically. What updates are there to Narrator in this version of Windows?
With Narrator, in Windows 11, the thing that we focused really on 2 things with Windows 11. The first one that we focused on was on our continued improvement on performance. And so one of the things that we hope you'll notice when you start Narrator in Windows 11 is that it just feels faster and more responsive. So when you start to read or when you use your command, Narrator is just instantly responding. And so we continue to work on that, given that was actually one of the top pieces of feedback that we were getting from the community, that Narrator just felt like it was a little laggy and it wasn't starting the speech as fast as they expected it to. And so that was one of the things that we worked on for Narrator for Windows 11. And then the second thing that we worked on Narrator are the scenarios that we made possible with Windows 11 for Narrator. And actually, not just for Narrator, but also for other screen readers in Windows, is that we also worked in our Windows accessibility platform to make scenarios with remote applications hosted in Azure Virtual Desktops accessible with Narrator.
Thanks, Carolina. That is Carolina Hernandez, Windows Accessibility Lead over at Microsoft. Thank you for taking the time to join us. Stephen, exciting to see all the new features and to realize that, with every new iteration of the operating system and really every new update now that it'll come down the road, we're going to see enhancements to these features across the board.
Absolutely. The change in Microsoft's approach to accessibility over the years has been immense. I mean, it really has. In the last 5 years, we have seen massive change and, a renewed sense of importance in the software, in the delivery of the software, making sure it's accessible out of the box for anybody. Any user now can just press the keys Control, Windows, and Enter, and that opens up Narrator for you. That gets you started. Or you can get to the accessibility settings through the control panel and create those visual schemes that suit you, create sound schemes that are nice and relaxing for you. You've got all those high contrast options, larger text, way more than has ever been before. And Windows 11 is in some cases a bit of an update rather than some kind of revolution, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. There's a rule in the blind world which is don't move the sofa, because if you move it, I guarantee you I'll fall over it the next time I walk in the room. Keeping things where they are is good, and that's something I think we all appreciate.
Well, you guys at home, stay where you are, don't move that sofa, and get in touch with us. Feedback at AMI.CA, and of course on Twitter at DoubleTap Canada with that hashtag AskDoubleTap. On behalf of our guests Carolina Hernandez and Stephen Scott, I am Mark AFLALO. Thank you for being with us this week. We'll catch you again next week.
Hosted by Mark AFLALO and Stephen Scott. Editing, Jordan Steeves and Mark AFLALO. Voiceover, Anna Vicino. Integrated Described Video Specialist, Ron Rickford. Coordinating Producer, Jennifer Johnson. Director, Production, Cara Nye. Director, Programming, Brian Perdue. VP, Content Development and Programming, John Melville. President and CEO, David Arrington. Copyright 2022 Accessible Media, Inc.